Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast. My name is Ben Jackson, I'll be your host for this episode. And as always, I'm joined by Scott and Joris. Scott and Joris, how are you guys doing this evening?
Well, hello there everyone.
Top of the league. We'll see how long that lasts, but at least for this 2 days, I can say that, so I'll take the moment.
We're just talking like, hopefully nothing will be outdated by the time we release this episode because of the midweek matches, and you just straight in there with that. But yes, Genk are top of the league, and we'll definitely get to how that happened in this episode. Let's just jump straight into the results from this weekend then. On Friday, had a really entertaining game actually, the Friday night kickoff. Westerlo 2, Salang 2. Kortrijk Zulte Waregem, the derby. That one didn't disappoint either. Kortrijk 1, Zulte Waregem 3. Massive result for them. Club Brugge then went and absolutely obliterated Eupen 5-1. Like that scoreline is flattering for Eupen, and we're definitely going to talk about that because that game is ridiculous. Sint-Truiden beat Charleroi 2-1. Genk beat Leuven 1-0 and we're down to 10 men. Standard beat Antwerp within 10 minutes basically. That one finished 3-0. Ghent beat Mechelen 3-0. That had massive ramifications for the Mechelen manager, as we'll talk about later. Club Brugge beat Anderlecht 1-0 despite also being down to 10 men. And then Union Saint-Gilloise battered Oostende 6-1. So a couple of thumpings in there, and we'll definitely get to talk about them. But let's go to the Friday night game. And it was quite nice actually to have Mola putting on two teams that we rarely see, would probably never normally see play against each other on Mola, but we got to see it this week, which was really nice. And that was Westerlo against Salang. Quite an entertaining game, this one. It was Salang who took the lead. Really nice kind of counter-attacking move from them. Nice play between Antoine Bernier and Morgan Poati. Poati then playing it across for Bernier to put it in to make it 1-0. Poor Poati, who actually had a decent game, I thought, in this. I thought he was great running up and down the left-hand side. He then got awarded the own goal in the 28th minute. Corner came in, broke out to Madsen, whose shot was definitely going wide. Deflects off Poati. Nothing Gary can do in goal about that one, and it's 1-1. Pretty poor defending actually from Salang. Just 5 minutes later, counter-attack, Chadley picks the ball. He basically runs from within his own half right up to the edge of the box. Pretty good run from Nene Douglas, but no one tracks him, just quite easy. Chadley plays him through. Douglas, really nice little finish there, and that was 2-1 to Westerlo. And at that point, you're thinking, right, Westerlo on this great run of form, Salang being Salang and kind of a relegation side that we've all thought of, they're probably going to lose and Westerlo are going to go on to win quite comfortably. However, literally 3 minutes into the second half, Marius Mandamaji got another goal for the season in the 48th minute. Really nice. Coming across the front man finish from him. He'd actually had a couple of near misses in terms of crosses in the first half from the likes of Poati and Bernier. So it's quite good that he finally got on the end of one of those. And I think he's got 6 goals for the season now, just one off Janssen, who was top scorer, which is mad when you think he only got 2 all of last season in the league for them. So he's had a really good season. And that's how this one finished 2-2. I guess, guys, pretty good result for Salang away from home. Westerlo will be slightly disappointed that their kind of run of wins comes to an end at home to Salang. It's probably a place or a team that have fancied themselves as continuing that run against.
Yeah, I think Sarang's away form has been rather impressive. I think it's probably the best way to describe it. They seem much more comfortable playing away from home than they do at home for a number of reasons. And you mentioned Marius Mandamaji there with his 6 goals. I mean, a lot of this pick-up and away form and the confounding of expectations is to do with his form. But they're not looking bad at all, and I think they're responding quite well to a lot of the criticism that's been flung at them as being kind of lambs to the slaughter, including, to be fair, some of that criticism has come from us. And we've been quite strong in our, we can't see a terribly, much light at the end of the tunnel for them as far as the outlook is concerned in this season. But actually at the moment, they're right in there and kind of fighting away and managing to put real pressure on some of the sides down there with them, who are not responding terribly well to Sarang handing them the baton actually, and I think that's feeding them a little bit, which is interesting. I think you're right, Ben. I think Westerlo probably will be quite disappointed, and we'll see that as 2 points dropped. I think they probably felt this was and should have been a kind of home win, but it just shows you actually that doesn't always work out that way. And if they can keep performing like this, dare I say, I never thought I'd be able to say this actually, if they can keep this up or anything like it, then they're certainly in with a shout of being able to stay in the top division, albeit I think it will still be quite close, but they've had an upturn in form, and the sides around them, as I was saying, are having a downturn. So from their point of view, it's looking quite good if you're a Metalo at the moment.
Yes, that's 3 games unbeaten now as well. Okay, only 1 win, so they will have hoped for one more win there, but picked up 5 points in the last 3. That are stats that in that region is definitely something you can be happy about. Yeah, also they saw a really nice attack I think it was still at 0-0 from Serrain, really from the back from goalkeeper Gallier. Yeah, also still indeed with their first goalkeeper still not in the team, and probably that will be the case for a long time. So that makes it more impressive. 2 of these 3 games already. You really don't want Serrain and play at home after 4 consecutive wins, especially if that last win was won against Club Brugge, because after Standaard also Westerlo fell victim to that. Okay, fell victim. Of course, they still got a draw, but they probably would have expected this game to go a bit more smooth. And they had the chances as well in the second half to get that win, but they didn't take them. So that also means no record winning streak in the first division for Westerlo. If they had one, that would have been their best streak of all time in the Pro League, or in the first division in general. And yeah, well, just one random thing. It's a silly thing, but I found it quite funny. The chant that the Westerlo supporters have for Nene Dorgeles, who scored the second goal, which is one of the a part of the stand goes Nene, which is no in Dutch, and that makes it ridiculous because of course he personally won't understand anything. And the other and the other part of the stand later on says yeah. Or is it the other way around? Actually, I might be confusing the order here, but which means yes, of course, in Dutch. so yeah, it's a ridiculous thing and it's a silly thing, but it still made me laugh actually once I heard it. It's not the first time I hear it, but now I thought, okay, maybe it's a good time to mention it when he scores as well. It was a really nice finish, definitely from him as well. Yeah, a draw. Serrain probably a bit more happy than Westerlo with it, but all in all, a good game of football at least.
Yeah, that song was class. Just listening to it, I was like, yeah. It's kind of like, it's done in that style of that Yaya Toure song, isn't it? The Yaya and the Colo one. But this one's just funnier, I guess. Completely agree with both of you guys there. Let's go to Kortrijk for the derby. Great atmosphere leading up to this one. And to start the game, Kortrijk just like flew out of the blocks. They really, really up for this, all over it. And you could tell that Kustovic was kind of like, let's get the ball wide and let's get the ball in the box, because this lot cannot defend corners or crosses or anything. Which, to be fair, they really couldn't to start the game. Like, Avenatti had a great header that was really well saved by Louis Boston. Boston back in for Sammy Bossa, and I actually thought Boston had a really solid game. He made some really good saves. This one from Avenatti tipping onto the post. He then had one from David Hennen tipping or putting that one wide. Unfortunately for him, he couldn't keep them all out. And one of those crosses was finally converted by Habib Keita, who beat Luca Villan to the ball to put it home. Before that, though, Zulte had some chances. Zulte Waregem had a couple of chances. There was this one which was like a corner was played in by Romans, flicked on by Vossen to the back post. Federa literally just has to like touch it in. Like, there's no one around him. It's an open goal, and he kind of like chests it, not even chests it, like stomachs it wide of the post. Honestly, it was such a bad miss. They then missed a couple of others. Federa again, but actually this time he did a really nice kind of dink over Ilic as Ilic came out, which was cleared by Watanabe. Ball comes back into the box, and Afor just like blazes it over the bar. Kortrijk just couldn't add to the lead before half time, so it was 1-0 at half time. And we were talking about me and Scott, we were definitely watching this one. We were like, Zulte Waregem just needs something different in the second half, because midfielders doing nothing. They just couldn't really get anything going. They'd had those couple of chances, but nothing really else was working. But something clearly happened at half time, because they just came out a completely different side and not dominated, but they just had much the better of the game in the second half. They finally put the ball in the net. Modou Tambadou showing the strikers how to do it. Similar corner routine to the one that Federa missed. Front post, flick on by Jelle Vossen, saved by Ilic, No one at the back post for Kortrijk, no one marking Tambadou. He just taps it in. And then literally 5 minutes later, another set piece, another Romans corner. Chinosa of 4 finally gets his goal, which I think he deserved for his hard work in this one. I think David Hennen was marking him, which was the stupidest thing I've ever seen, because Hennen's not a great header of the ball compared to someone like a 4. So that was a bit stupid. And Zulte Waregem had basically turned it around at that point, 2-1 to them. Kortrijk just had nothing. They kept trying these crosses and stuff, but at this point, the confidence was there in the away side, which we hadn't seen all season. They were dealing really well with all those kind of crosses and stuff. Boston made a couple more good saves. And then Zeno Gano came on. The man had kind of been returned. Apparently he apologised to him by Lié. I think there was probably a little bit more kind of each apologised to each other, but they were like, we're going to say you apologise, because the manager has to save face in this sort of situation. His first touch is to convert a penalty. Federa's fouled by Siech in the box. Gano steps up, puts it in, gives it to the Kortrijk fans behind the goal, who are clearly really happy to see their former player score for their rivals. Finishes 3-1 to Zulte Waregem. You could just see how much it meant to the fans, the players and the staff to win this one. And is this now a confidence boost that they can take into the next couple of games?
Well, there's a big question. That's a very big question. And I was actually asking myself that after the game. I thought, okay, is this the catalyst now for something? We'll find out. We'll find out over the next few weeks. I quite enjoyed this game, actually. You know, Ben was talking about the atmosphere at the start. Great atmosphere at the Gildensporen, actually. And it just underlined to me that this is a local derby in West Flanders that really matters. If you're of West Flemish descent and a supporter of one of these sides, definitely everybody was up for this. It's a difficult place to go, the Gildensporen, actually, at the best of times. You know, it's a small, tight ground, and I can see how it could be quite an intimidating place to go when there's a degree of bounce to it, as it had this weekend. Everybody seemed well up for this and really recognised it was a big game, a lot at stake. Kortrijk played quite well in the first half, I thought. They just couldn't get a second goal when they were on top in the game, which might have changed the complexion of the second half. And it was interesting because, you know, Zulte missed a couple of, as Ben was saying, pretty big chances at this level in the first half, which would have turned it in its head already. But I think they stuck to their game plan and kind of come out and got a reasonably early equaliser in the second half through Tambadou, who, I don't know what you guys think. I think there's an argument to say that he's possibly been Zulte's best player, along with Nicholas Romans this season. You know, he gets the equaliser, and actually Zulte never really looked back after that. They just kind of exerted more control after then, and Kortrijk just completely fell out of the game. Actually, it looked to me like they were a beaten side pretty much when the first goal went in. Sometimes you see big swings and momentum in games, and you really did feel quite an obvious swing when the equaliser went in. I had a feeling that Zulte were going to get another one. Big Gano scoring, coming back, no surprise at all. Ben did actually say everybody before this game that he felt that he was going to score, and that he was going to score the winner. And although it didn't turn out to be the winner, it's certainly the goal that killed the game. We know how important he's been to them over the last few seasons, and I think, you know, when he was locked out for those few weeks, I think that did them no favours. Circumstances obviously forced them to kind of change tack in that, and, you know, look what happens. You know, when you're struggling as badly as they have been, you need absolutely your best players. Jelle Vossen needs some service and he needs some help, and he gets both of those things from Zeno Gano, and he gives them an option in the air as well. A really nice moment after this game, actually, I thought. You know, the Zulte bench were obviously celebrating, and the players went over to celebrate with the away fans, rightly so, having a great time. There was a lovely moment that Mbaile had with his family. I think his wife and his kids were there, came down from the stand down to the touchline, and, you know, he was embracing them. And I liked it, because I thought that told me that, you know, he's been feeling the pressure a lot, not unsurprisingly, over the last few weeks. And, you know, to be able to let off a little bit of steam like that so publicly, I think is a nice thing to see. I'd like to see more of that in football. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see whether this is the catalyst that these things can be sometimes, and that Mbaile spoke of in the run up to the game about how this could be, you know, exactly the springboard they need. Let's see if they can use that. Not many games now, obviously, before the World Cup, and they've got a couple of big ones coming up. I think they're at home to Anderlecht next, which is not going to be an easy game for them, but they'll go into that with infinitely improved spirits anyway.
Really good win for Zulte Waregem, of course. Kortrijk, yeah, 1 week you beat the leader when you play at home. In the next home game you lose against Zulte Waregem. It's not only for them, but it happens, I suppose. And the other thing is to mention, which is a ridiculous thing in a way, like the Lamkelzee and his yellow card with taking the ball for what I personally still think was a legitimate penalty shout. Of course, he should not take the ball, but I still feel like actually Kortrijk should have given the penalty. But because him doing that, I guess they didn't. I think this worked counterproductive for them. It was already at the back end of the game, and the game was probably over anyway, even if that would have been a penalty and that would have been scored. But still, a bit of a weird moment for sure. And for Zulte Waregem, of course, yeah, their first away win, which is not a surprise if you only got your second win of the season, and 6 changes made by Leje, so he definitely felt like they needed a change and did it quite drastically. And that's not even counting the Hallebeck as well. That was only as a substitute, of course. They paid off in this game in the end. I missed most of this game, but in the final minutes, I tuned in and I saw Gano. That was my first image was Gano up waiting for the penalty to be taken, or the VAR check for the penalty. And his first kick that scored a goal, and much like the Anderlecht fans last week, but of course, I'm less subjective in the matter in who scores there, and then how everything happens in this specific game. And Zulte Waregem, yeah, notably, the XG of when I watched, because they might have adjusted that happens sometimes, but when I looked it up was 3.41, which is okay. Of course, there is a penalty in there, but still would account for 2.5, or even a bit more still. Which is probably the most they had in a few games, although they sometimes have created chances, so I don't have any basis for that, but they definitely had a high XG, which is it's always difficult. XG you need to see more on for longer term, of course, and not it's less of a useful metric on a specific game. Yeah, it's good for them that at least they got a high XG in this game, and hopefully they can keep it up in the long run. And not only that, of course, they really needed this win. Now they catch on a bit more. They're still in the last position, of course, but they're now within reach of a lot of other teams. There's I believe it's 6 or 7 teams in the regions inside one game. I'm not sure if Zulte Waregem is already there, but they definitely are in a position where they can they're back into it, I guess, and not lagging behind, which if they would have lost this game, that definitely would have been the case. And now they've fought themselves back into it. Kortrijk have missed a chance here to escape danger for a few games at least.
Yeah, definitely. I was concerned by that Kortrijk second half performance, especially in the sense of I didn't feel like Kustovic made enough changes when it was clear that momentum, like Scott was saying, momentum had completely shifted. It didn't like he tried to change formation or anything like that. It just kind of was like, yeah, let's keep crossing the ball and see what happens. And yeah, Lamkelzee spent more time talking to the referee than actually getting on the ball. He was literally, every time there was a foul or anything, Lamkelzee was just there speaking to the ref, and it was just like, mate, come on, just play. But we're not here to talk about Didier. Let's go to Bruges and their game against Eupen. As I said earlier, this was flattering for Eupen. It finished 5-1. The biggest shock, I think, in this one was that it took until the 25th minute for Circle to open the scoring. Before then, away they'd hit the post. There'd been a couple of other chances they hadn't taken. They finished with 10 shots on target, 18 shots overall. It's Kevin Denke who got the first one, kind of bobbled around a little bit in the box, but then he was there to tap this one in. Not the best of his goals, but the next two were special. Thibaut Sommers then grabbed the second after Circle just cut them apart again, and then they cut Eupen apart again, and in the 39th minute, Ueda had made it 3-0. It looked like Eupen had a lifeline though, when Marcelan just absolutely took out one of their players in the box. Eupen get the penalty. I think it was Nuhu who got taken out. Steph Peters stepped up to take the penalty, and he made it 3-1 at that point. And what to say about Steph Peters after the game, because he was absolutely steaming. Second half, not really much change. It was just kind of more, you just didn't really feel like Eupen were ever going to score. They only had 2 shots on target in the whole game. So yeah, they just weren't really threatening at all. Kevin Denke got his second really, really nice finish into the bottom corner in the 77th. And then he got his hat-trick. And this goal was just sublime. Picks it up, cuts inside, outside the box, smashes it into the top corner. Really, really good finish from him. He gets a well-deserved hat-trick. Cercle Brugge win 5-1. After the game, Stef Peters came out and was basically saying how bad it was in terms of a performance, and like kind of how he just felt like players he didn't say it, but what he was kind of implying was they don't really care. He was also saying some players are even struggling to perform well in training. He's like, people aren't doing the right things in training. And it just, hearing what he said after the game just makes me way more concerned about this team than before, just in the sense of like, there's clearly a lot of things wrong there. And by the sounds of it, kind of the outlook of the side and the makeup of the squad is clearly wrong. Like, there's clearly not a cohesion or togetherness. The fact that someone like Stef Peters comes out and just feels like he needs to say that rather than saying it to the players within that kind of behind the scenes region is pretty concerning. And that, I mean, yes, Circle have changed manager, and yes, we expect them to be higher up than they are, but that's still a side they were relatively close to in terms of relegation battle and stuff like that. And then to go there and get absolutely hammered 5-1 and be really, really poor. Like, I think I said it in our chat, didn't I, guys? I just couldn't work out, is Eupen really, really bad or Cercle Brugge really, really good? And I think it was just a bit of both at the end of the day, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it definitely was a bit of both. I think, what Stef Peters is talking about there is really interesting to me because things are clearly a bit chaotic at Eupen just now. I think what Steph's getting at, is a little bit more worrying as well because, he's talking about, team spirit and application and work rate and all of those things. And yeah, okay, I mean, some, players famously aren't great in training, and that's just the way that they train. But I think to make a general comment about that, as a kind of squad thing is pretty concerning. That's for sure. So there's a lot for Bernd Stock to kind of mull over there, I think. On Denke, the interesting thing about that was I don't think he's aware of kind of quite how significant his evening was. His hat-trick makes him only the third Circle player to score a hat-trick this century, which I thought was quite a stat in itself. But he's the first Circle player to score a hat-trick at the Jan Breidel since Oleg Yachchuk back in 2010, which is pretty amazing, to be honest. He's been playing pretty well recently, I think. There's probably going to be people watching Kevin Denke a lot more closely now because he's been showing, flashes of brilliance on and off for quite a while, not just this weekend. Sometimes his finishing lets him down a little bit, but strikers have good and bad days like anybody else. Cercle were very good, actually, very, very good. 2 wins in their last 3. Kind of unlucky against Union the other week, not to get something out of that game because they actually played pretty well in that as well as we discussed last week. So they've had an upturn in form since Miron Muslic became T1 and have started to do the one thing that was eluding them, and that's score. They're now starting to score quite a lot of goals. I thought Ayazi Uida had quite a positive performance, obviously getting a goal. Probably should have had more than one. I thought he had a good game. And Big Jesper Daland, actually, such was his positive desire to carry the ball. I thought somebody had whispered in his ear, "You're playing as an inverted winger this week, Jesper," because the ball was glued to his foot, and he was running right through Eupen at will. He looked really up for it. So Cercle look like they've turned a corner, and they'll be really encouraged now because I think their next game is away to Sarang. I think that's another big game for them because I think if they get something out of that, then I think the whole potential complexion of where they're going may well have changed.
Yeah, definitely a good performance by Cercle Brugge. Yeah, also for a striker that needs the confidence, like Scott mentioned already. Both of you guys mentioned, in a team that needs goals as well. It's really good to get that hat-trick and even to get that first goal. That first goal was a typical poacher goal I found, and I think his first goal of the season, again, I think it was against Oostende, was similar. So that reminded me a bit of that. And to get a hat-trick, that's just fantastic for him. I believe Cercle Brugge even managed to get the highest XG in this game that any team in the league has had throughout any game of this season so far. I haven't gone through every single game to go check that, but I believe it was 4.44 or something like that. A nice number as well, anyway. And good job by them. And the goals are coming. We knew they were based on this longer term XG data, and it's good for them that they came relatively soon, so that they have a bit more breathing room now. Yeah, one player I want to highlight from Cercle Brugge that I'm less convinced about. Also the one that caused the penalty for Eupen and therefore brought the game a little bit back to life. Although that's very relative, given how everything panned out, is Marcelin. Yeah, yet that was a really clumsy challenge, and like I guess it's also a bit the personal liking. Like I'm not really fond of the type of player that he is, and it's not the first time he has some weird moment and that the lights seem to go out. And a quality you don't really want to see too often, and either or ideally ever at your center back position, of course. About Eupen, well, I can be quite short. I usually try to get a few notes for every team to run through, but they didn't really give me any reason to. So not do it this time, and let's move on to the next game.
Yeah, that's the least they deserve, I think, to be honest, after that performance. Yeah, next game was St. Truden against Charleroi. Charleroi had all the ball, but lost the game. 64% possession to 36% possession. Shinji Kagawa got the game going with the opening goal in the 12th minute, straight from a corner, and he said he meant it. Or he implied he meant it, but it was a ridiculous goal. They always are straight from a corner, but he said he meant it, so fair play, will take his word for it. The second goal didn't come until the 70th minute, and of all the players making a break, it was Frank Boyer. He's been desperate to score this season. Like, he just seems like he's like on a mission to score goals. And it's actually a really nice finish past the keeper to make it 2-0 to St. Truden. At that point, Charleroi did get a late consolation. Amir Hossein Zadeh, Iranian midfielder, with a goal in the 92nd minute, which was actually a really, really nice finish into the far corner past Coppens, who was in goal for injured Daniel Schmidt. But it finished 2-1 to St. Truden, sorry, not Charleroi, which means they end their kind of 2-game loss streak in a row and inflict a 2-game losing streak onto Charleroi now, and leapfrog them in the table. Joris, I know you actually watched most of this game because we tried to divide them out, and I said, I'm not watching that. It's probably going to be really boring. Was it really boring, or was there more entertainment? Because I feel like at one point I said there's going to be about 10 goals for Cercle here, and you said it'll be lucky if we get 5 passes strung together in this one.
Yeah, I can just basically repeat the statement I just made about Eupen for both teams here, especially in the first half. But, indeed, there was the Olympic goal from Kagawa. Well, from what I've seen, the interview I saw, he didn't really mention it. So I think he would... many players would claim it, but I think he left it a bit in the middle. But, okay, either way, I guess Patron actually should have done a bit better there. Don't want to throw too much there. It's a difficult situation to judge for sure. Sint-Truiden were quite efficient, definitely. It's also you mentioned Coppens, his first game in 9 years in any top tier division anymore. So that's a remarkable stat as well, of course. From Sint-Truiden, I also want to highlight one player that stood out a bit for me, which is Boca, bringing some freshness and some flash and actions in the game. Plus, he's not shying away from the defensive work either, so he does put in his shift. So again, I still have to see how that continues, but it's definitely one I will have a closer eye on from Sint-Truiden in the next games. Definitely for Charleroi, I could repeat the statement from Eupen. They got their first shot, not even on target, just their first shot total point at 60 minutes. A shot. It was even also technically not a shot, a header, but the first header by Heijmans around the hour mark. Yeah, that tells you a lot. So of course they also had an XG of 0 until that point, so 0.00. They did manage to score a really great goal with their, I think, only shot on target. Although FOTMAP says it was their second, but I might have missed one. but their goal was a really nice one, but it came in stoppage time. And if that is their first shot on target, it's even more remarkable that it came in stoppage time, I guess. But even if it's at that second, it shows that they probably did not deserve more in this game, out of this game. Just also Patron on high balls. Not only that goal, but also another disallowed goal where there was a minor fall, maybe. Was it by Leistner or was it Bauer? One of the two, where he didn't really look great and got a bit of an escape by the whistle being blown before the ball crossed the line. So there was definitely no check going on either. And also just in general, the giving away the goals, Charleroi, they were not efficient at all. Bager had the second goal, had no clue where the ball was, and Boyap let him pay for that. Sint-Truiden with a good win. They probably needed one as well after a few winless weeks. And they needed to wrap some more points. And Charleroi, still a bit of a drag of a season. It's looking more and more like a drag of a season. While it looked promising at the start, let's see if they can turn this the storyline around.
Yeah, it's funny how things work, isn't it? Ben saying, Joris, you can watch that one because I think that game's going to be a bit of an eyesore potentially. And what happens? Somebody scores direct from a corner, which you don't see very often. Much like Ben, I was watching Club Brugge's game against Eupen as well. So I went back and had a look at some of the highlights in this, and for me, one of the things that stuck out was kind of quite how poor Charleroi were. Actually, I think it's a little bit concerning, the kind of downturn in form now, and I think what's becoming obvious is the kind of nobody's stepping up to the striker role, really. You know what I mean? Goals aren't being spread around, that kind of thing, and that issue's being really kind of coming home to roost for them a little bit now. They've got a slightly tricky schedule coming up as well. The next game tomorrow evening, as of recording, they're at home to Kortrijk, which is a game that's going to be a little bit more intense than it probably would have been before. They then play Cercle away. They've got Antwerp at home, and then they go to the Segeka to play Genk. So it's getting a wee bit tricky for the Zebras, and I think they need to do something quickly before they get sucked into something that they'd rather not.
Yeah, I just don't really know where they go in terms of the goal scoring. Like, who do they go to? Because within the squad, they just don't have the goal score. I think their top scoring, or if you go through their scoring charts, the striker with the most goals according to that is Anasari. He doesn't even play for them anymore, and he's got and that's 2 goals. Morioka is the top scorer with 3. Dan Hemmens has got 2. Then it's all just 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. I honestly don't know where they go. Like what Still can do. Like I just don't feel like he's got anything in that squad in the sense of goal scoring.
I think it is really tricky, Ben. I think you're right, and I think they need to. I'm sure they'll be aware of this issue. Obviously, it's not new, but it's now starting to affect them in a way that I hadn't up until relatively recently directly. But the big question now is, well, what do they do in January? I mean, this is a transfer window that's going to be unlike any other as well because of the World Cup. I think it's going to be a bit busier. Obviously, players are going to go away to the World Cup, do quite well, and attract the interest of clubs who will make a speculative move for players in a way in January that they wouldn't normally. How that's going to impact other clubs on, their January plans remains to be seen yet. Is that going to change the nature of certain targets? I think it's going to be quite interesting to see what happens there. But I think they need to ask themselves the big question about, okay, do we bring someone in January specifically for this? And at the moment, I think they can't take the risk of not doing that, to be honest. I think it is something they have to try.
Definitely, but it's just quite funny when you then look at the side just above them in the table, Sint-Truiden. They've only scored 12 goals this season. They've played 12 matches, but they've also only conceded 12 goals, which just seems very Sint-Truiden-esque, doesn't it? Like, you know what you're going to get from them. They're going to be solid at the back, and they have got players that you think could score goals, I guess. Like someone like a Gianni Bruno. Hayashi's now coming back in, so you think maybe he can grab a couple. But, I mean, finding goal score is always difficult, but you're looking through the Charleroi squad to find someone. You're like, oh, Badji's still young. He's not really done it. And Benz has never really been like a massive goal scorer. Osunzade obviously got that goal at the weekend, but is he going to be able to do it on a regular basis? Who knows? Golizadze is just kind of like in and out of the team. He's had no consistent run of it. You'd normally bank him to score a couple every season. So, yeah, be interesting to see what they do. Let's go to a team that usually have no problem scoring goals, and that is Genk. and they travelled away to Leuven on Saturday evening. Didn't get off to the best of starts. Just a couple of minutes into the game, Carlos Cuesta with a handball in the box, which led to a Leuven penalty. Up steps Sofian Chiellini, fresh off the back of a really good performance against Zulte Waregem. He was given a start in this one, and his penalty was pretty dreadful, pretty pathetic and weak. Van der Voort easily saved that one. Onuachu then scored the opening goal. Really, really nice link up between him and Mike Tressel. Tressel back to Onuachu, outside of the box. He fires it at or just outside the reach of Kojikaru. He probably could have done a little bit better with this, but either way, he got the first goal in this. However, things got a little more difficult for Genk when Preciado got himself sent off in the 43rd minute, much to everyone's kind of seemingly frustration. Even Rankin after the game was like, it's really annoying and frustrating that he did that. However, Genk did manage to hold on in the end to a 1-0 win away at Leuven. Joris, I know I went for you first on the last game, but obviously as a Genk fan, I'm going to go for you first on this one. This win did eventually put you top of the league. Were you satisfied with the performance and the result, especially considering you only had 10 men for the second half?
Yes, that's the major thing to consider, and in a way, yes, it was a completely different kind of satisfaction than in previous games, but that they held out, that they showed character, that the fighting spirit really is there. All in all, not giving away that much, although things definitely could have gone differently if Leuven had taken some of their chances. But all in all, not giving away too much. I think that they showed a new side to them, like it's a bit of a cliche maybe, but it feels like one of those games that last season 100% they would have not even just drawn, but definitely still would have lost after that red card. Of course, the red card itself, very, very stupid thing to do from Preciado. And which was also came at a bad moment in time. Leuven had in the first half a 5-10 minute spell where they also created a lot of chances, but didn't materialize on it. Luckily, but after that and before and after that, the game was quite under Genk's control, and that story changed completely after that. The nature of the game changed completely after the game, and they went a bit too much to my liking into this defensive mode. But that's also partly because of that feeling like, well, we are not the best defenders in general, so if we do this, they 100% they will score. In the end, Leuven managed to not do so, and luckily for a large part, reassuringly for a large part, because of the defensive performance from Genk, but of course also because of a few misses that they still had. The Norre had a really big miss. There was one instance where Gonzalez narrowly missed the ball or only slightly managed to touch the ball that most likely would have gone in if he would have just hit it properly. We'd be able to hit it properly, but there was also a bit of a thing with coming to Leuven already. Their crossing was quite awful in general, and that made it a bit easier for both for the defense and also more difficult for the attackers to link up to it and to actually make something out of them. One of the reasons why they did not manage to at least get one goal out of playing against 10 men. One of the worst penalties I've ever seen, not in general, but one of the worst penalties I've seen that has at least still been hit on the targets, with a reasonable chance of going in still, just because of that fact. But a little bit of an escape there, of course, as well. At that time, Genk was not in that fighting mode yet. In the beginning, I felt they were a bit too lax, especially Munoz had a difficult first half. Second half was way better. Trésor had a brilliant performance in a different way than we're used to. He also still got an assist, but he put in a lot of the work and fought back really hard and defended back. Showed character in a way, and was really one of the players standing out in a different role than you were used to. That's also why in the end he had to be subbed off though, because you could see his energy level dropping, not only of him, of a few players. up front, who had the difficult task to actually still try to make something out, to run after any ball with not that much support anymore. Still feel like indeed the approach was a bit too negative afterwards, but that's also partly because Leuven actually was quite okay throughout the whole game, quite okay and too good, except in the places where it matters. Indeed, I feel like the goal they conceded, the Kojakaro probably could have done better. Well, it was a nice build-up and link-up play between Onuachu and Tresor, and Onuachu took the shot quite quick, so I guess that's probably the factor that made Kojakaro narrowly missing out or doubt something. And of course, I'm happy with the win. Van der Voort with an outstanding performance. Not that he had to do the most difficult saves, but the things he needed to do, he did. And well, he held a penalty, even if it's a bad penalty. It was, like I said, if he would have dived the other way or just anything, it still would have gone in. So that's always a nice thing, and it really seems to be growing in the season. One thing that I also really did not like, though, about the approach was also throughout the whole game, they gave away so many set pieces, and there it's a bit of a miracle that Leuven did not score, because, well, they are notorious for their free kick and also their variations, which they also tried a few times. I actually did not see this game coming away with a win anymore after minute 60 or so, I guess, even though putting Paintsell back in did change the complexity of the game a bit again, with a bit more threat going forward, and maybe not even a threat going forward that much, but keeping the ball more forward and winning some corners and some possession higher up on the pitch. But all in all, yes, really good to see the team spirit, the fighting spirit shown, and taking this win that, well, they probably did not really deserve, but they grind it out, and it's a bit ironic that this is a performance that would ultimately take them to the top spot for now as well.
Yeah, I think I can't add very much to all Joris's points there. I think he absolutely covered everything there. I think the most impressive thing to me was the fact that Genk managed to get the game over the line. Like he said, we saw another side to them, being able to kind of dig in and get a win, playing more than half the game with 10 men was really impressive in itself. You don't see that very often in football, but they cope with it really, really well, particularly as Joris was saying that, Leuven didn't play badly at all and will feel like they deserve to get more out of the game. One of the reasons they didn't was, as Joris was saying, Van der Voort had a really rather good game as well. He played his part, but yeah, really impressed with them managing to get that result over the line. And I think that, in terms of character in itself, is a huge thing for them. They've been going very well since the start of the season, but to get a result like that in these circumstances is another really big character building thing for this squad and Wouter Franken, and I think he'll be really, really pleased with that.
Nothing more to add from me on that one. Joris and yourself, Scott, have definitely covered that one in all the detail. Let's move on to Sunday's lunchtime kickoff then, which was Standard Liège against Antwerp, and we could basically sum this game up in 10 minutes because that's all it took for Standard to basically win it. William Balikwisha with the opening goal within basically 90 seconds. Nice play from Aaron Donham on the left-hand side. He gets to the byline quite easily, cuts it, comes back across, keeps the ball in play quite well, crosses it in, Balikwisha taps it in 1-0. Dennis Dragers picks it up, I think it's kind of just inside the Antwerp half, drives into the box, cuts inside, puts it in the top corner, 4 minutes in, 2-0. Lovely play on the right-hand side between a couple of players. Sian Sanak plays a 1-2 on the edge of the box. Someone dummies it through their legs. I think it might have been Dragos again, actually. Sanak then gets it in. He's just in acres of space in the box, fires it in. First goal for him in professional football. 3-0 to Standard at that point. It's just like straight away. And this is 3-0 up without Selim Amala or Philip Zinkernagel, the two players that you presume are their most creative and most forward-thinking. And they just blitzed Antwerp in the opening couple of minutes, to the point where Sam Vines was replaced basically 15 minutes in. Richie Delac came on. Half-time, they made a load of changes as well, just couldn't get back into the game. They had a couple of chances. The team selection just looked completely weird to me. Janssen and Frey up front just doesn't work. They're two big, imposing strikers, but they don't complement each other in any way. I think it's just a terrible idea to try and play them together. You've made a problem basically by them being good goal scorers at the moment. Janssen obviously is in form, so you can't really drop him, but Frey is one of the better strikers, so you need to play him because otherwise he's probably going to be quite upset. But apart from that, I don't really know what else to talk about in this game, guys. It was just kind of like those first 10 minutes basically decided the game. Antwerp tried to get back into it, couldn't really do it. Guess the kind of highlight for them was Nainggolan got caught smoking before the game. Which you're not allowed to do in any stadiums, so there's going to be stuff about that. It was an e-cigarette, but he was just sat in the dugout, just before the game. This was like quite a while before the game. I'm not talking like just before the game kicked off or anything like that. Like, let's not be ridiculous. But this is like in the same week that he got arrested again for driving issues. So this was it was a concerning result. But I feel like, I don't know, you guys may disagree, but I feel like their performances, they just haven't been great, but they've been enough to win them games. But this time it felt like the performances, like when they were 3-0 down, you were like, well, I just don't see how they're going to get back into this game because they haven't been playing that well anyway. They've just been able to win games because they've been pretty solid at the back and kept teams out, but they're already 3-0 down. And it's like they don't have the player that's going to take them through. Like, I don't think they had enough pace out wide to cause any sort of worry for the Standard defenders in that sense. Balikwisha came on late, but you can tell he's still not completely fit. Stengs was on the bench, he came on. Like, they missed someone like a Fisher or someone like that. I don't know, maybe this is where they missed Emmanuel Benson. I don't think they would miss a Benson because I thought they had enough talent within the squad, but maybe this is the game they did. I don't know if you guys agreed, but I was pretty kind of like, I don't think they're getting back into this game despite the amazing start to the season they've had.
Wow, yeah, I mean that first 10 minutes were pretty extraordinary, to be honest, in a number of ways. I mean, what we've learned actually from Standard, I think, not just this weekend but since the start of the season, is that they can compete, that they can beat the top sides. You know, they've gone and beaten Antwerp now. They've beaten Club. I think two main challenges ahead for them, one of which, you know, we know, and that's to build more quality and depth in the squad, which is going to take time, although they have started that process. That work will continue. The other one is they need to try and find some consistency, because their story of their season so far is that they've proved, as I was saying, that they compete with the other big boys, which is what they want to do, but they've dropped points in games where most people would probably expect them not to, and put in performances which have been, you know, substandard. So if they can address that and play like this more often than not, then, you know, they will, you would imagine, find a degree of consistency. What's interesting is they're now right in the mix potentially for a playoff one spot. They look much more like a side who are going to push hard for that now than even they did 2 or 3 weeks ago. So lots of positives from a Standard point of view. I thought the second and third goals, Dragos's and Chanak's, were both lovely goals, actually. Really, really nice football. And Ronnie Dyla, you know, rightly delighted with those. I would be as well. You know, I think he enjoyed both of those goals, you know, in particular. And, you know, they're starting to look like a Ronnie Dyla side now. You know, that there's an element of wearing their heart on their sleeve like he does. And, you know, I think that can only be a good thing. They just need to produce that level of performance against sides that wouldn't be considered, you know, one of the big sides, and stop motivating themselves only for big games, but for all games. Antwerp obviously lost a couple of games now, sort of recently. I suppose the question is, you know, how are they going to respond to this? They never really looked like getting back into this one. As Ben was saying, it was pretty much over after those kind of 10 minutes. They need to kind of respond and respond positively over the next kind of 2 or 3 weeks. I think some people are asking the question, obviously, is that their bubble burst now? We don't know the answer to that, but a couple of defeats recently, and this is going to test the squad for kind of the first time this season. Interestingly, Ben bringing up Janssen and Frey not really being able to play together. I definitely agree with that. I think in lots of ways they're kind of too similar, but Ben highlighted what Mark Van Bommel's dilemma is there very well. So I was a little bit surprised to see them kind of both playing, to be honest, because, you know, they obviously preferred one or the other up till now, so I didn't really see the reason for that, particularly in a game like this, you know, when things had been working for them, you know, playing just one of them from the start. You know, it's interesting, you know, the psychology of going into a big game like this, you know, what dilemmas that poses to a coach, and that was a good example of one this weekend. So it'll be interesting to see where Antwerp kind of go next, and looking forward to seeing them in person rather soon.
Yeah, definitely. And well, I'll go back to Standard before I also give a few 2 cents on Antwerp. I just want to highlight Sanak again a bit more. His first goal at his first start for the senior squad as well. So that's a really nice thing for a 17-year-old still. So really good. Then yeah, just on that start, you guys already touched on it. Just want to paint a more colorful picture still. Like I had so many comments of people that said like, well, I tuned in a bit late, so well, and then because I thought, well, these were more, of course, more neutral fans or fans of other teams at least, and because they expected, well, okay, a slow start maybe, and we'll see, you can tune in and watch it later. And actually they missed everything in these 10 minutes. I even had some instance where there was someone who missed the first goal, but tuned in then, and I saw it was 1-0. He managed to rewatch that goal. By the time he was back to real time, it was 2-0, so he had to do it again. And not that much later, the 3-0 fell. I'm not sure if he was already back on live streaming, or he also needed to rewind there, but yeah, some things that were a bit unexpected, but yeah, it wasn't all in. Most of it was in these 10 minutes, of course. From Standard side, yeah, you guys already touched on everything, and it was really impressive. Also, the atmosphere was looked really great. One last thing is in that Balikwisha goal for Standard, and for the one, and another Balikwisha return as my bridge towards my segue towards Antwerp as well, making his return as a substitute, which also might answer one of Ben's questions. Maybe he is a missing link that they have. He had started the season really well. Michel-Ange Balikwisha, that is, and yeah, maybe that's the spark that they need. And on Antwerp, yeah, also this 15 minutes, Vines was scapegoated. That's quite interesting to see. It was 3-0, of course, and it's still a bit weird even then to do it at 15 minutes in, especially when it's not only one player that was underperforming there. So I get that there was some kind of tactical change there, but with doing so, but still 50 after 15 minutes, I'm sure Sam Vines' confidence is at a high now. The Nangolan smoking accent, it's mostly clumsy. I guess everyone knows that he still does that, but just doing that in front of, well, where you know that there can be cameras in the dugout. Yeah, it's just not a smart thing to do. Of course, it's just bad publicity. It's anyway bad to do it for himself as a player, I guess. But okay, if he does it, then yeah, as a club, at least, if you need to deal with it like that, then we really urge him to do it wherever there's no cameras around, and do it secretly, more secretive. Also, next to him was the lad sitting with an energy drink, which I also found interesting, though, because if it was indeed an energy drink, it looked like, at least, and that's also not the best kind of thing to do for a sports professional. Yeah, to drew off in general, but okay. Yeah, it did not affect his performance, I guess. Although he was the one coming on after 15 minutes, but yeah, not that much happened to be honest after this first initial 10 minutes. And well, for Antwerp, I don't want to put too many take any put too much on this weight on this game. Still, they lost this one. They could have lost this one either way. Of course, the way they lost it is a bit discouraging, I guess, for them. But yeah, I guess now this was a test of character that they did not manage. But in the upcoming weeks, they have a few big opponents coming, and yeah, they will have a few more tests of characters here, and we'll have to see, and we'll know a bit more about how their character, how that test of character goes. Indeed, how if they manage to bounce back and get some results out of these big games. This is, I think, now it's becoming interesting for them to see in the upcoming sequence of games. But on the singular game, I guess there's not that many conclusions to take, and yeah, of course, it can go either way here from here.
Yeah, I'd expect them to get a result against Oostende on Thursday when we're there. And I'll be very surprised if they don't win that one. They just need to look at what Union did to them and try and do the same to build some confidence, get some goals in, just put this one behind them. One side who did put a poor midweek performance behind them was Ghent. They were awful in the Conference League during the week. We'd all spoken about it. You guys have been a little bit more confident in them than I'd been. And unfortunately, I was right. They lost 4-2 to Djurgården, but they were 4-0 down within just into the second half. They were just awful. Really, really bad. Got completely outplayed. But then they had that little chance to get back into it, but they just didn't really deserve it in the end. They've given themselves not a mountain to climb in terms of qualification, but they've put a lot of pressure on the next 2 games. However, they got back-to-back wins domestically, back-to-back clean sheets, a couple of goals as well. Again, kind of like with Club Brugge, you knew a goal was coming, just the way they were creating quite a few chances against Mechelen. Mati Samwaz got the first one in the 35th minute. Took them a while to get to that moment. Big of a starter, then got himself sent off for Mechelen in the 49th minute for a foul on Nulio Fortuna. Fortuna then got the second goal in the 64th before Vadis or Gigi Ofoe in the 72nd with a really nice finish. Finished 3-0, and it also finished off Danny Boyce as manager of Mechelen. He's gone. They announced it just before we started recording, so very, very kind of them to do that. Stephen Defoe is going to take over. Scott, with your Mechelen kind of hat on, I guess, poor performance and not really surprising that we've seen the back of Danny Boyce given kind of everything else that's going on in the league in terms of table and stuff.
Yeah, I think you're right, Ben. I think they've been sleepwalking into big trouble really in recent weeks, and obviously this other defeat this weekend, which was quite emphatic. They were not good again, Mechelen. It's kind of brought things to a head. I was a little bit surprised the news kind of came today, but I was aware of kind of how vulnerable Danny Boyce was. They've made the change because, as I was saying, they're getting sucked right into trouble now. So they've had to do something, and they've gone down the Cercle Bruges road of reacting early rather than leaving it too long, which I think is probably right. I felt personally a couple of weeks ago that perhaps they were going to have to pull the trigger, that things were not working at all, and that you couldn't rely on, influential injured players like Kieran Marabti kind of coming back. You can't afford to wait for things like that. There was a few worrying signs. I think the most worrying thing was, and this was actually something that we discussed a little bit between us just yesterday, and that is that Mechelen were exceeding their own XG across the whole season so far by almost double what it should be based on the opportunities they were creating, which was quite an alarming statistic, because that suggests they should be further down the table than they are, and they're actually, ironically, outperforming their actual play at the moment. And when you look at a simple statistic like that, and obviously XG is by no means an absolute, but the fact that they're bottom of the XG table out of all 18 sides, quite so dramatic is the disparity between the number of goals they've scored and their expected goals. That was alarming in itself. But I've been saying for weeks now, a bit like a broken record, that their output has just gone off a cliff, and there's no signs of that changing yet. And this has led to today's change. Stephen Defoe coming in, I can understand that. Knows the club well, obviously, some stability, giving Stephen an opportunity, which I think he does deserve, to be fair to him. The one question mark I have longer term is, I'm not completely convinced he's necessarily the right choice in the long term, but that doesn't mean that he can't do a job, say, for the next few months or the remainder of this season. That will all depend on obviously kind of, how they do, even though he's now the permanent T1. They're not looking for anyone else. So I wish Stephen well. As we always do when a new coach comes in here at the BFP, something had to change there, and it has. Just on Ghent for a second, I think it's a case of steadying the ship with them after, a pretty bad week on the whole, a bit of egg in their face. Van Heisenbroek, trying to use comedy to sort of, disarm some of the criticism. He's been doing that in recent weeks, and much actually like Felix Mazu, that's how he's been handling a lot of the criticism coming his way, which is not always the best way of going about it. I think sometimes that gets people's backs up even more, because it looks like they're evading the real issues. But yeah, they've steadied the ship, which I think obviously from their point of view was really important. But this game kind of went the way I expected, to be honest.
Yeah, Scott already said a lot. Not that much to add for Mechelen, but third consecutive loss. 1 point from the bottom three now. Combine that with the XG stats that Scott now mentioned as well. Yeah, and only one shot on target in this game. You can expect to lose these 3 games. I believe they were under Club Brugge and Gent. So that's not on itself the bigger issue, but yeah, there are underlying factors that are very, very much more worrying. And about Hint, I guess in the real league crisis at least averted, but it still looks to be a bit of chaos with Van Hazenbroek also kicking back to the board after the game. At least in the last 2 Pro League games, they got a record of 7 goals scored and 0 against, so at least that part seems to be okay, but as you already touched on as well, in Europe, they definitely also need to change some things and get up there. I already also commented like this was the last time I backed them in Europe. It's a bit of a ridiculous thing to say. I think they get a bit too much of slack, or too little of slack for their recent performance, because last season they were, even though they got defeated by a team they maybe should have gotten through, and they were all in the Conference League. They were the last remaining Belgian participant in Europe, even though it didn't look like a very cheerful season there, right? Yeah, they should do better. This game, they got 10 shots on target, so yeah, not much to add from their side. But yeah, there it's more whatever is brewing between the board and Van Hazenbroek. That's the more interesting parts of the pitch now, which they both cost themselves, I guess.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that one plays out. Wonder who's going to win that argument. Anyway, let's move on to Anderlecht against Club Brugge. Both sides were in action in Europe during the week as well. Anderlecht lost again to West Ham, but they had a much better second half, I think, than the first half in that one. Lost 2-1. It's a shame, but again, not much is riding on those games against West Ham. They weren't the big ones that they need to look at. Club Brugge, as everyone probably knows by now, got the draw they needed away at Atletico Madrid. Were denied a penalty. We're not going to go into that debate now either, but they got the 0-0 draw, even with 10 men when Sir got sent off. Dealt with all the kind of normal stuff you'd expect from a Diego Simeone side when they're desperate to win and they can't believe that players will go down pretending to be injured, because they've never done that in their lives and they've never time wasted on anything like that, because they're perfect and they never do that. It's funny watching Savic just losing his head constantly. I was like, mate, just chill out. Like, it does annoy me a little bit, doesn't it? Because you're watching these teams, you're like, we've seen you guys do exactly the same, and they just can't stand it when teams do it back to them. So it's quite nice to see Club Brugge sticking it back to a side like that, getting the point they needed and putting them in a lot of trouble to get out of the group, whereas Club Brugge are nicely through and can kind of relax into the next couple of games, but go on and win the group, give yourselves the best possible chance in the knockouts. However, they went to Anderlecht on Sunday and they came away with the win in this one. No goal until the 70th minute in, and it was absolutely chucking it down with rain. A lovely play from Van Aken. He squares it back across into the box. Casper Nielsen's arriving to make it 1-0. Simon Mignolet with a big save. Was it over the line? Was it not? He saves it. He then runs back to clear it off the line. I don't know. We'll probably have to talk about that one. Then there was also a red card for Silla in the 94th. Which would be a shame for him to be suspended for them, because he's actually been pretty decent for them so far this season. But it's Club Brugge that win this 1-0. Quite interesting, guys, wasn't it? That it was basically the same side that had played against Atletico was using this one. So it wasn't the rotation that we'd seen in previous post-Champions League games, which showed how much I think Hurfkens was like, no, we can't afford another domestic slip-up.
What I found very funny, actually, was Hofkins actually saying that, no, there's no connection between a little bit of rotation and the fact that we lost our next domestic game after a big European win. Nobody was buying that, particularly after what Ben was saying about, playing a full-strength side there. They clearly had obviously had a conversation about that, despite Carl deciding to kind of pretend that it was merely some kind of strange coincidence and there was no no connection at all. Nobody was picking up on that. Just on clubs' European exploits, first of all, briefly, brilliant news for Belgian football, Belgian coefficient. Really great performance. Obviously, the earliest of Belgian sides qualified out of a Champions League group, to not concede as well. Just superb stuff, and I've been really enjoying all of the extra attention that not only club have been receiving, but that Belgian football has been receiving domestically, and off the back of this, I think has been positive for everybody. So that's been a real delight. So well done to the History boys, for qualifying for the knockout stages for the first time. And I know, to the club fans listening, please don't get in touch and tell me you have made a European Cup final. We know, 1978 against Liverpool, but I think everybody would probably agree that is the same tournament, perhaps in name only. It's a very different kettle of fish, but a superb achievement, and I've got my fingers and toes crossed that the club are going to get a lucky draw for the knockout stages. In terms of this game, it's interesting because I think the difference ultimately was the difference between a side who have, and I'm going to use a footballing cliche here, have killers in their side, have players who know when to pick the right pass and just to put their foot through the ball sometimes. Anderlecht created a few big chances towards the end, Simon Mignolet being one of the reasons why obviously they didn't get anything out of the game. He was extraordinary in that last 15 minutes. But I just feel that, if club had some of those opportunities late on that Anderlecht did, you feel they would have scored more of them. And a lot of this came down to just Anderlecht's ability not to be able to finish things efficiently with some of those chances, looking to pick a pass. And it's that thing that Arsenal used to be criticised for years ago about trying to dribble the ball over the line. Sometimes I was thinking, look, just put your foot through the fucking ball sometimes, it was a little bit frustrating kind of to watch. I feel if maybe they'd done that, they might have got something out of this game. But they lose the game, and the pressure is definitely still on Mazu because of that. This is not a game you want to lose, and there were some pretty grim faces in the director's box at the Lotto Park at full time. So we'll need to see what happens in the next few weeks. Peter Verbeek not around; he's ill. He was having some time off, but yeah, I mean, it looked like somebody had died after that game in the director's box.
Yeah, well, I think this is indeed a moment to also for me to reiterate the brilliant performance from Club Brugge in Europe so far, and really, really brilliant. So not much to add, I guess, but this definitely deserves also my praise. Then to this game, first loss for Anderlecht against Club Brugge in the last 8 games, I believe, since January 2020. It should not necessarily have been a loss, as Scott mentioned. They created during periods of the game a lot of chances. Well, noteworthy is Stassen's debut as a striker as well, starting debut and also league debut, I believe. And another performance I think worth highlighting despite the loss. The Basts, who, if we pull it a bit towards the Red Devils, performed a lot better than Vertongen, his experienced colleague in this game. So yeah, just to mention that and to give him some shout there, and maybe Roberto Martinez something to think about. Who knows? But that's something. And from Club Brugge's side, indeed, with that goal or not goal, the Mignolet question, I guess it's all up for debate. I guess we won't be talking too much about it, but we've had a few cases of this. I guess one case per season, more or less, last few seasons. Where they really should be goal line technology, and then there is no debate, and it will be clear completely. I'm really on the fence. Like, there's nothing much you can say about sitting on the fence here. Nothing much you can say. Was it over the line or not? Well, is it a clear error or not? No. So stick with the decision. That's with the rules and regulations that are in place now, and systems, technology. I guess that's all we can do. But yeah, that ball, Mignolet probably should not have had a chance. A bit touching on what Scott said as well about putting your foot through the ball, and no matter the quality of the goalkeeper, that one should be inside the net. Few worse or curious things. Yeah, Lang not featuring still, and the explanation that from Hoefkes that he probably feels that he that he wants a bit more, that he's not happy with his status in the team at the moment. Yeah, a signal for Lang, and yeah, we'll have to see if he can pick it up. The Silla red card, I was really astonished by the reaction of Club Brugge bench, because like there was a very clear red card to me, and like I don't know how you can even argue, and there was so much commotion going on and they really couldn't take it. I don't know, that was a bit curious. That's all. It's not, that's nothing to do with your sportive merits and anything, but like I don't know, that outside of the pitch, that was a weird performance, I guess. But a good win for them, and much needed win for them as well, to indeed not get behind. Yeah, and I guess then it's time to move on to Oostende Union to take Ben's role quickly.
Yeah, no, that's fine by me. It saves me a couple of sentences. Yeah, Union, fresh off the back of another comeback in Europe. 3-1 down at home to Braga, come back to make it 3-0. Of course they do. Even when they're like 3-1 down, I was like, they're going to come back because it's Union. That's what they do. Then travel to Oostende, you're like, oh, maybe that game took a lot out of them, but it clearly didn't. They just went and absolutely pummeled Oostende. Dante Van Zier in the 12th minute getting them off the mark. He then had a nice little second one in the 31st. Stayed 2-0 until the 63rd minute, where we've seen this before from Ross Sykes, where he just decides that he's no longer a centre-back. He's a marauding forward player. He just runs up the pitch, plays a 1-2 on the edge of the box, ends up in the box, smashes it in, nice finish. His like kind of shots to goals kind of efficiency rating must be the best in the league for anyone that scored over one goal. So kudos to him. Lovely finish. Simon Adinga then makes it 4 in the 78th. I mean, he's just, having a quality season. Thierry Ambrose does get one back for Oostende, but by then it's the 90th minute, it's far too late, and they just collapse even more. Victor Boniface and Cameron Puertas adding a couple extra to make it 6. Pretty ruthless stuff from Union in the end. They had 58% possession, 18 shots, 8 of which were on target. Oostende, to be fair, they had 10 shots, but only 3 of them were on target. Pretty miserable defensive display from Oostende. They are now just 1 point above the relegation zone. This really has kind of battered their kind of goals against. They into 22 now, and you can see if you take away 6 from that, it's wasn't actually looking too bad. But I guess the Union they just keep going, don't they? That was a really ruthless performance, and I wasn't expecting it. But it's them, so kind of was. But most teams, you'd be like, right, you're playing a weaker team than you just played in Europe. You've put in a big performance. Maybe there'll be a slight drop off, but there wasn't in this game, was there?
No, not at all. I think that was probably the most impressive thing about it. I mean, we know that Union, for a long time now, have only really had one setting, and that's what makes them such an exciting side to watch. We know how positive they are and how resilient they are. But, I mean, the truth is, this game finished 6-1 because they refused to kind of take their foot off it. Do you know what I mean? It was right until the very end. I mean, there's a couple of goals in stoppage time. Do you know what I mean? There are very few sides who wouldn't slow down, if you like, a little bit when the game's clearly already well won. But this side will not do that. You know, they won't let those standards drop. And thinking about it, I feel, guys, I don't know what you think. I'd be interested to hear what you think. I actually think they are stronger now than they were last year. I think there is more depth in that squad now, and I think there are more options for Karel Geerers to play with. And I think they've obviously had an extra injection of confidence from their European adventures. They're clearly enjoying that and responding well to it, and that's carrying on into their domestic form. You know, as these things happen when they tend to go that way, and there's a lot of positive things going on at Union at the moment, and they remain one of the best sides to watch. And rumour has it we will be in the house watching them very, very soon, and I think we're all kind of quite excited about that.
Yeah, well, I don't get the hype. They didn't play so well. Like you didn't expect this, Ben. They did worse than last season when it was 1-7. So yeah, disappointing performance by Union. But in all seriousness, well, what can you still say? It's this was also the first time I think they rotated this much, and that's touching on what Scott said about the squad depth. Like they have rotated a few players, but now it was more was more visible, I guess. There was only one moment, which was like one big chance for Oostende right before the 0-2, where it could have gotten 1-1, and who knows, things would have been different. And on the next attack, the 0-2 fell, and Van Zijl scored his second. He also found his scoring boots again. That's also important for them, of course, for this current run of form. But yes, they're absolutely flying. And Oostende was not so bad until a certain point in the game. After the 0-2, the confidence was already a bit lost, I guess, and they really imploded after the 0-3, which was like also mentioned, was only after or around the hour mark. So yeah, quite late in the game. So you would not. It's 0-3 is already a bad score, but you see it relatively often. You even saw that scoreline a few times during this particular match day inside one league, the Belgian Pro League. But yeah, that it would end up at 1-6. That's ridiculous, to be honest. One Oostende player that can be a little bit happy with his fixture. All the rest is probably having a nightmare, and probably himself also is Ambrose, who much like last season managed to score the one goal for them against Union. But well, what is there to say after such dramatic end of the game as well? Like I mentioned, like 1-0-3 or 1-4. If it would have ended at that, well, it's a big scoreline, but it's still within margins of what can happen in a regular game if things go a bit wrong. But 1-6, that's not really looking. Not a great look for anyone around Oostende at the moment. And really good performance from Union, still, like I mentioned, flying and climbing up the table. And I tend to agree with what Scott was saying about they being stronger or more balanced, or definitely that they have more squad depth. That's even an objective thing, I think, even not even subjective. But they've done a good job over the summer window and added a few very valuable players to their squad.
Yeah, definitely. I completely forgot about the 7-1. And I just was like, oh yeah, of course. That absolute batter in the Gaydon. So yeah, they love going there. Probably want to play there all the time.
Oh,
Yeah,
it was also funny to see Van Zijl in the post-match interview, where he mentioned, "Oh yeah, it's not so bad scoring 5 goals against Oostende." And it's like, mate, you actually lost count here.
Can we play you every week? That should have been the chant. Yeah, fantastic result for them. They are in the top 4 now. That's 4 wins on the bounce as well. Great. That's everything from 1A and European football. Before we go, let's quickly visit the Challenger Pro League, because an old friend made a return, and there were quite a few controversial. Well, there was one very controversial decision in one of the games, but over to you, Scott, to give us a little summary of what happened in 1B Challenger Pro League. Sorry.
Quick score summary of the action this weekend, because there was plenty of it as usual. Beveren got a big 2-1 win at home against Denza. Standard Liège lost 4-1 at home to Molenbeek. Virton and Liège played out a 0-0 draw. Lommel lost 4-3 at home to Club Next with a very, very dramatic and highly controversial penalty late on winning it for Club Next. Young Genk won quite a dramatic game as well against Anderlecht 3-2. That had a last-minute winner, which ends Anderlecht's unbeaten run and also takes them off the top of the table. And Beerschot shared the points, 1 each, with Dender. In terms of the bigger picture, that now means Beveren go top. Liège are second. Beveren are very much the team in form at the moment, won 4 of their last 5. Ben mentioned a familiar face returning, Mbakani scoring a late winner for Beveren. And one of the interesting things about this was, I think he's shown that he's still got it. Everyone, still got those elements of his game that caused lots of players problems. Still very physical, still fantastic in the air. And yeah, definitely proved this weekend that he's still got a lot to offer. So if Beveren can manage his fitness and they can work on that, because I don't think he's going to be able to feature for 90 minutes week on week, but he came on this weekend and was incredibly effective in the end. I mentioned the controversial goal in the Lommel Club Next game, a penalty that wasn't quite clearly. Lommel unhappy about that. I would be if I was a Lommel fan as well. I've had a look at it a number of times. I don't see a foul on the edge of the box, and if there is a foul, it's at least 2 metres outside the box where the contact's made. So the referees had a nightmare, and the linesman's had an even worse nightmare, because he definitely should be seeing that. There's absolutely no excuses for that, particularly with a linesman's view of where the supposedly the original contact is. So that's one to kind of go and have a look at if you haven't seen it. We've shared that on social media. But my moment of the entire weekend, guys, comes from the Challenger Pro League. And it is Beveren CEO Antoine Gobin. And I must say, thanks to the Beveren fan who shared this footage on their social media, which we've now shared. Go and have a look at it on our Twitter. Antoine, after the game, celebrating the win with the Beveren Ultras, standing up on the safety barrier, conducting them. Was an absolute joy to behold. The thing with CEOs and football guys is most of them are so far removed from fandom that it's kind of frightening. And Antoine, being a friend of the pod and the character he is, has been working very, very hard over the last few years to obviously build up a real connection with the fans in the club again. And, you know, to get in right amongst the fans like that things like that are so important. And it was great to see. And I saw it, and it made me smile a lot. Watch the footage a lot, and then kind of, you know, I've said this in my own social media and from the BFP's account that, you know, I think a lot of other CEOs could learn from Antoine's interaction there. Just an absolute joy to behold. So I'd like to see more of that, and I'm throwing down my hat to all the other CEOs who listen to the show. How's about it, guys? Getting down there with your ultras and seeing some action.
And that was even before they knew that they would take the top position as well. He also was in touch last week, funnily enough, because we made the mistake of calling Beveren Waasland Beveren. But I think I also found out why we did that now. On Google, when you show the standings, it's still Waasland Beveren. So I think there's something that Beveren actually can do about that still to change something online there. Because Waasland Beveren is leading the Challenger Pro League table at the moment. But that's well, it is a fact, but it's not so important, of course. But yeah, I'm wondering if he's still going on now that actually, well, after the weekend they took over the top position as well.
Yeah, that was amazing, hilarious. So what you're saying is basically, according to Google, there's a team winning the Challenger Pro League who doesn't even exist anymore. It's the ghost team at the top. Very much looking forward to. We will be at Liège against Lommel on Sunday evening in the Challenger Pro League. Looking forward to seeing those two sides go up against it. And obviously we're going to get to Beveren at some point. But there's definitely some good feelings going on around the club. And that video, I think, just kind of sums up where they're at the moment, doesn't it? Like, unbeaten in 5, 3 wins in 3, top of the league, best attack, best defence. Like, it's looking good. And maybe this, after last year, disappointment not getting back up, this maybe will be the year for them, but we will keep an eye and see. That pretty much sums it up for this week's episode. Obviously, we've got midweek fixtures as well, and then we've got a weekend worth of fixtures, so we won't be coming back with another podcast until next week. We'll obviously have all met in person. Some of us for the very first time. Is quite hilariously weird, despite the fact we've been doing this for 2 years, but we'll all be in the same place. And yeah, we'll definitely be bringing you some stuff from kind of the grounds we visit, the people we speak to, the matches we see, and all that, all over our kind of, mainly over our Twitter account. So if you aren't following that, definitely go check that out, because you'll be able to see everything we get up to in Belgium. But guys, thank you very much for joining me, and I'm looking forward to joining you in a couple of days' time.
Likewise, I need to rush off now and finish my packing.
Yes, me too. Although for me it will be a bit less, of course. But yes, looking forward to meeting everyone around Belgian football in the upcoming time.
Hopefully the first trip of many. But as always, thank you very much for listening to this episode. If you like it, if you like what we do, please do leave us a review on your podcast app of choice. You can also get in touch with us through all the usual ways, mainly through Twitter or through our email address as well, which you can find in the description. Thank you once again for listening, and we'll speak to you very soon on another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast.